I never really thought twice about living alone. Honestly, I loved it. My name's Rachel Miller, and for the past 3 years I'd been tucked away in a small, cozy house on Maplewood Drive, a quiet street in a suburban town called Brookhaven, about 40 minutes from the city. It was the kind of place where drama never touched down. People waved as you drove past. Lawns stayed neat as if trimmed on schedule. The biggest mystery in town was whether the diner would ever fix its stubbornly broken neon sign. Life was calm, predictable. Some might have called it boring, but boring suited me just fine. After years of noisy roommates in college apartments and pulling back-to-back 12-hour shifts at the hospital, peace was a luxury I guarded fiercely. By that spring, exhaustion was my shadow. 12-hour days, 6 shifts a week sometimes. When I finally made it home, all I wanted was silence, something easy to eat, and the soft embrace of my couch. That night wasn't supposed to be any different. At least it didn't start that way. It was early April, one of those damp, bone-deep cold nights when it feels like the rain has been stitched into the sky for days. My shift ended around 8:30 p.m., and the drive home pressed on my nerves more than usual. The roads gleamed black and slick under the streetlights, fog curling low across the pavement like a heavy white blanket. Every light seemed to flicker. The whole town felt swallowed by wet, suffocating darkness. By the time I pulled into my driveway at 9 sharp, my little blue SUV splashed through puddles, scattering raindrops against the wheel wells. The neighborhood was unusually still. No porch music, no kids cutting across lawns, just the steady percussion of rain on rooftops. A few houses glowed faintly behind curtains, but most were already dark, tucked away for the night. I killed the engine, slung my work bag over my shoulder, and jogged up the porch steps, rain soaking through my hair and sleeves. The moment I stepped inside, I exhaled. Warm air greeted me, mixed with the faint lavender from the candle I'd left burning earlier. Silence wrapped itself around me. Thick, absolute silence. I kicked off my soaked sneakers, hung my jacket on its hook, and changed into a worn hoodie and sweatpants. That was my ritual. Shed the weight of the day, collapse into comfort. Dinner was simple. Leftover chicken and rice reheating in the oven, while I curled into the couch with a blanket, half watching something forgettable on TV. The rhythm of rain against the windows soothed me. For a while, it felt like the rest of the world had dissolved, leaving me in my safe little bubble. Then came the knock. It was sharp, loud, too firm to be casual. Not the gentle rap of a neighbor checking in, but something deliberate, urgent. I froze, my fork hovering mid-air. My chest thudded painfully as silence seemed to stretch even tighter. Who the hell was knocking at this hour in this weather? Moving quietly, I set the plate down, my bare feet pressing soundlessly into the hardwood as I walked toward the door. The living room lights were on. Anyone outside could see the shadows moving inside. No pretending I wasn't home. I leaned into the peephole. A man stood on my porch, drenched through. Water streamed off the hood of his black rain jacket, dripping onto the welcome mat. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, his skin pale beneath the porch light. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes heavy, face slack. Maybe early 30s. Definitely not someone I recognized. He wasn't from this block. I would have noticed him walking a dog or mowing a lawn. Cautiously, I unlatched the lock and cracked the door just enough to speak. "Can I help you?" His eyes lifted to mine. For a beat too long, he said nothing. Just stared with this blank, unsettling stillness that sent my stomach tightening. Finally, in a slow, deliberate voice, he said, "My dog got out, jumped the fence. I was wondering if you'd seen him." Relief loosened my chest just a little. A missing dog. That made sense. Still, something about the way he spoke was strange, like he had to pull each word up from somewhere far away. "I haven't. Sorry," I answered softly, forcing a polite smile. "I hope you find him, though." He nodded, but his eyes flicked past me, sliding into the house for the briefest moment before locking back onto my face. That tiny glance lodged in my brain like a thorn. Without another word, he turned, stepping off the porch and into the rain. His figure disappeared into the mist, the sound of his boots fading against the wet pavement. I shut the door carefully this time, twisting the lock. My pulse still ran too fast. Weird guy, I thought. Probably just exhausted, stressed over his dog. Losing a pet can break you. But that look in his eyes, vacant, like he wasn't entirely there, stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my comfort. I shook it off, went back to the couch and turned up the TV. Louder this time. For a while, I managed to convince myself everything was fine. The TV hummed. The rain beat steadily against the windows and my breathing slowly evened out. But 15 minutes later, the sound came again. A knock. Sharp, deliberate, echoing through the house. My body went rigid, blood turning to ice. Before I even stood up, I knew. I didn't need to look. I forced myself to the door, every step heavy with dread. When I opened it, there he was. Same soaked jacket clinging to him, same water dripping from his hair, same lifeless expression. Only now, something different lingered in his eyes. Harder, sharper, like frustration boiling just beneath the surface. "What is it?" I asked, my voice firmer than before, though I could feel it shaking underneath. He raised a hand and pointed toward the side of my house. "I saw him run into your backyard. Can I go back there and look?" The way he said it, flat, commanding, it wasn't a request. My instincts screamed, no. Everything in me wanted to slam the door. But logic tried to argue. Maybe he really did see the dog. Maybe he was desperate. Maybe it was harmless. Yet his tone didn't sound like desperation, and his face didn't look worried. It looked empty. Yeah, I forced out, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can walk around." His eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, for a beat too long. Then he said, "Thank you." As I started to shut the door, he shifted forward, as if assuming I would let him inside, as if the invitation was automatic. My heart jolted. I slammed the door and locked it fast. I moved quickly to the kitchen, peering through the glass back door to keep him in sight. At first, he paced slowly along the fence line, head turning side to side as though scanning for movement. But every few seconds, his gaze flicked back toward the house, toward me. "Just let him look. He'll leave," I whispered to myself. But when I glanced away for only a moment, just a moment, and turned back, my breath caught in my throat. His face was right there, pressed against the glass. I stumbled back, slamming into the counter so hard pain shot up my hip. My lungs seized, breath trapped. He didn't move. He just stared straight through me, raindrops trailing down his face, hand resting on the glass like he was testing it. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, though my voice cracked, trembling. He tilted his head slightly like a curious child. Then he spoke, voice low and steady. "I think he might be inside. Can you let me in to check?" My stomach dropped like a stone. "No, he's not in here. You need to leave." He didn't move. His palm pressed harder against the glass, his skin whitening as his expression twisted. That mask of emptiness warped into something raw, anger, sharp and sudden. Then came the bang. His hand slammed against the glass. Once, twice, again. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." Each strike rattled the door in its frame. Panic surged through me. My hands fumbled as I grabbed my phone, dialing with fingers that barely obeyed. 911, what's your... The operator's voice barely reached my ears before I saw the change in him. The moment he noticed the phone in my hand, he froze. Every movement stopped. His expression emptied again, going flat, hollow. And then, just like that, he turned. Without a word, he walked off the deck and vanished into the curtain of rain. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. By then, of course, he was gone. They listened, wrote everything down, asked for a description. They promised to patrol the area, but I could tell by the look in their eyes there wasn't much else they could do. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floor, every shift of the shadows outside the windows made my chest seize. I kept replaying his face behind the glass, the emptiness, the sudden anger, the way he pressed against the barrier between us like he belonged inside. A week later, the news confirmed what my gut already knew. Another woman, just 2 streets over, had opened her door to a man searching for his dog. She didn't survive. The article didn't give details, only that it turned violent fast. But it was enough. My stomach twisted, my hands shook, and the truth sank in with terrifying clarity. If I had unlatched that door for even a second, I might not be here to tell you this. I still remember that summer with a kind of clarity that feels unnatural, like the memories have been burned into my head. It was mid-July, one of those weeks when the air itself felt heavy, pressing down on your chest. I had just turned 16 a few months earlier, stuck in that awkward space between wanting independence and still being treated like a kid. Life felt simple on the surface. School was out, I didn't have a job yet, and the only real responsibilities I had were keeping the apartment somewhat clean and making sure my little brothers didn't tear the place apart while Mom was home. We were living in a duplex in Brookhaven at the time, a quiet neighborhood, though not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. Ours was a 3rd-floor unit in a squat 3-story building with too many stairs and long, dim hallways that never felt completely empty, even when you knew they were. It wasn't the worst place we'd lived, but something about it was off. Not in any obvious way. Just this low, nagging unease I could never quite put into words. Like the walls carried secrets. There were a lot of us packed into that apartment. Mom, Dad, my 3 younger brothers, all of them under 5 and always screaming or running or crying about something, and my older sister, Olivia. She was 18, and everything I wasn't. Stylish, confident, always out with friends or heading to work at her job. I looked up to her, though I would have rather swallowed glass than admit it. That summer felt strange, though. Dad was pulling long shifts in construction, sometimes gone 12, 13 hours at a time. Mom was constantly shuttling the boys to parks, pools, anywhere to burn their endless energy. Olivia was rarely home either. That left me with whole days alone in the apartment, and at first I loved it. No toddler shrieking, no mom sighing over undone chores, no Olivia barging into my room without knocking. Just silence. Just me. That day started like any other. I woke up around 11, sunlight spilling through the thin curtains and the cheap box fan moving hot air around my room. I lay there scrolling TikToks for a while, half awake, before finally dragging myself out of bed. The apartment was still and hushed, the kind of quiet that makes every little sound stand out. The hum of the fridge, the faint murmur of someone's TV through the wall. I poured myself a bowl of cereal, slouched on the couch, and lost an hour to YouTube before my eyes landed on the list Mom had left on the counter. Dishes, sweep the living room, do a load of laundry. I sighed, shoved my empty bowl into the sink, and figured I'd start with the laundry. It always took the longest. The laundry situation in that building was one of the things I hated most. Each floor had around 10 units, but only one shared laundry room, tucked beside the stairwell. The stairwell itself always creeped me out. The door had a little square window, just the right height for someone to be standing on the landing, staring in. I used to tell myself I was being dramatic, that it was just a door, but no matter how I tried, I couldn't shake that prickling feeling of being watched every time I passed it. I grabbed the overflowing basket from the bathroom, nudged the door open, and stepped into the hall. The shift in atmosphere was instant. The air felt cooler, but heavier somehow, as if sound didn't travel the same way out there. My flip-flops smacked against the scuffed linoleum, each step echoing too loudly, too exposed. When I pushed open the laundry room door, it groaned on its hinges. Inside, the fluorescent bulb flickered, like it couldn't quite commit to staying lit. buzzing faintly above the cramped space. The hum of the machines filled the air in a way that made me feel boxed in. I shoved the clothes into the washer, poured in detergent, and hit the cycle. The door clanged shut behind me, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, relieved to step back into the hallway. That was when I heard it for the first time. Click, click, click. I froze, hand still on the door handle. The sound was faint, but sharp, like a lighter being flicked over and over without catching flame. My eyes darted down the hallway. Nothing. Just the same stretch of linoleum, the same quiet. Then the sound stopped as sudden as it had started. Probably someone's lock, I muttered to myself, forcing a shaky laugh. Or something stupid. I shook my head and started back toward the apartment, trying not to look at the little square window in the stairwell door. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Too quietly. I did the dishes, swept the floor, even wiped down the counters like Mom would have wanted, just for something to focus on. Anything to keep from replaying that clicking sound in my head. I left the TV on for background noise, some mindless sitcom laugh track filling the silence, while I scrolled through Instagram. Even then, I couldn't shake the prickling sensation crawling between my shoulder blades, the one that made me glance at the front door every few minutes, as if I was waiting for someone to knock. By 2:30, I figured the laundry should be ready for the dryer. I grabbed my keys, forced a breath, and stepped into the hallway. The air hit me differently this time. It felt thicker, almost humid, even though the building's AC usually blasted cold enough to make you wish for a jacket. My flip-flops slapped against the floor, each sound bouncing off the walls like I was announcing myself. I tried to keep my pace steady as I walked past the stairwell. Then it came again. Click, click, click. My steps faltered. The sound was louder now, sharper, deliberate. My pulse quickened. I told myself not to look, just keep walking, but curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of me. I turned my head toward the little square window in the stairwell door. Nothing. Just the empty landing bathed in that harsh yellow light, the chipped metal railing casting long shadows. I let out a nervous laugh under my breath, though it sounded more like a gasp, and hurried the rest of the way to the laundry room. My hands shook so badly I fumbled with the clothes, shoving them into the dryer with clumsy, jerky movements. My skin prickled, every nerve on edge, like someone was standing just behind me, watching, waiting. I slammed the dryer door, hit start, and practically sprinted back down the hall. Once inside the apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "You're fine," I whispered to myself. "You're just freaking yourself out." Click, click, click. This time it was louder, inside the apartment. I froze. The TV kept playing, but I muted it with a shaking hand. Every muscle in my body went rigid as the sound carried through the door, slow, methodical clicks, spaced evenly, like someone wanted me to hear. Then came footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, each one closer. My stomach dropped. I forced myself toward the peephole, moving like my limbs weren't mine. I pressed my eye to the glass. My breath snagged in my throat. Standing there was a figure. All black. Not just clothing, but everything. Its shape was human, but wrong, like a silhouette carved straight out of the dark. It stood completely still, facing away from me. Then its head tilted, just slightly, and the sound came again. Click, click, click. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Call the police? Call Olivia? What would I even say? Heart racing, I scooped up my cats, Jasper and Luna, and bolted to my room. I slammed the door, locked it, and curled on the bed with them pressed tight to my chest, every sense straining past the pounding in my ears. Then, after what felt like forever, the front door opened. "Emma?" Olivia's voice carried down the hall. Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. I shot out of my room, moving too fast, nearly tripping over myself. "Jesus, what's your problem?" she asked, tossing her bag onto the counter, eyeing me like I was insane. I spilled everything in a rush. The laundry room, the clicking, the figure. At first she laughed, but when I described it, her face drained of color. "Wait," she said quietly. "What did it look like?" "Just black," I stammered. "Like a shadow, but solid." Her eyes widened. "I've seen it too." Her voice was so low I almost didn't catch it. She explained that she'd noticed it before, late at night in the hallway, or out of the corner of her eye in dark rooms, always just standing there. That night I begged to sleep in her room. She didn't argue, maybe because she was shaken too. We left the nightlight on, the fan humming softly, its steady rhythm almost comforting. But at 3:30 a.m. I woke up. Click, click, click. Not from the hallway, from under the bed. Jasper hissed, his fur bristling, his back arched. My blood went cold. Then I saw it, a long black bony arm sliding out from beneath the bed, fingers curling against the floor. I couldn't even scream at first. My throat locked up. Then instinct ripped the sound out of me, loud enough to jolt Olivia awake. "What the hell, Emma?" She groaned, sitting up, rubbing her eyes. But when I looked again, the arm was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. A few months later, we moved out, and I swear I've never felt such relief in my life. Nothing strange has happened since. Whatever that thing was, I hope to God it stayed in that apartment. I never imagined one quiet Saturday night would etch itself into my memory forever. It was late October, the kind of season where the afternoons still held warmth, but the nights carried that sharp bite of cold, mixed with the earthy, almost metallic scent of fallen leaves. I was 17, still stuck in that awkward space between feeling grown and still being treated like a kid. Our neighborhood was the kind of suburb that practically advertised safety. Manicured lawns, mailboxes all in a row, neighbors waving at each other out of habit. Nothing bad happened there. At least that's what I'd always believed. My parents, Mark and Rachel, almost never went out. Dad wasn't a social guy, and Mom usually preferred takeout on the couch over crowded restaurants. But that night was different. It was their anniversary, and they'd actually decided to treat themselves. Mom lingered by the door before leaving, adjusting her scarf. "You sure you'll be okay for a few hours?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with that motherly caution. I laughed. "Mom, I'm 17, not 7. We'll be fine." By we, I meant me and my little sister Lily. She was 13, though her attitude was at least double that. From behind her phone, without glancing up, she muttered, "We're not babies." Her thumbs kept flying across the screen like nothing in the world could interrupt her texting. Mom still looked unconvinced, but Dad slipped an arm around her shoulders and chuckled. "They'll survive. Call us if you need anything." "Got it," I said, giving a lazy mock salute. The door closed behind them with a soft thud, followed by the low hum of their car pulling away. Instantly, the house seemed bigger, emptier, like the walls had swallowed their laughter and left behind only silence. I kicked off my sneakers, grabbed a blanket, and threw myself onto the living room couch. Our place wasn't big, 2 stories, warm and a little cluttered, but cozy. The living room opened into a sliding glass door that led to the backyard. In the day, sunlight poured through it. At night, it became a black, impenetrable void. To the side was the hallway to the front door, with its frosted glass panel that always caught the glow of the street lamp outside. Lily plopped down beside me with a bowl of popcorn so oversized it looked like she planned to survive a zombie apocalypse with it. "Horror movie night?" she asked, already smirking like she knew my answer. "Why do you always pick scary movies when Mom and Dad aren't home?" I groaned, scrolling through Netflix anyway. "Because it's fun," she shot back, grinning. "Don't be a chicken." I rolled my eyes but hit play on The Conjuring. If I was going to be jump-scared into oblivion, at least it would be by something good. The movie started, and for a while life was normal. Just the TV flickering, the occasional crunch of popcorn, the hum of the heater kicking in. I almost forgot we were alone. Then, 40 minutes in, during one of those unbearable quiet scenes, we heard it. A metallic rattle, sharp and unmistakable. A key sliding into the front door lock. Every muscle in my body froze. Lily went still too. Our eyes locked, wide in the shifting glow of the TV. The sound came again, slower this time, deliberate. The turn of the knob. My brain scrambled for logic. Dad. It had to be Dad. Maybe dinner ended early. Maybe they forgot something. Dad? I called out, forcing my voice to sound casual even though it cracked at the edges. You back already? No answer. I sat forward, pulse spiking. Dad, that you? Louder now. Still silence. The light from the TV flickered across Lily's pale face. Why isn't he saying anything? She whispered, clutching the bowl tighter. The knob turned again, slow, purposeful, and then the faint groan of hinges as the door opened just an inch, spilling a deeper shadow into the hallway. I shot off the couch so fast the blanket tangled around my legs. Dad? My voice cracked this time, brittle and sharp. Nothing. The air thickened, pressing down on me, suffocating. Behind me, Lily hugged a throw pillow like it could shield her. Her whisper was trembling, raw. That's not Dad. My stomach dropped. She was right. If it were him, he would have answered. He always did. Then from behind us, outside, the sound of scuffling. The backyard. The sliding glass door. Lily gasped, spinning toward it. The curtains were half drawn, and the darkness beyond pressed against the glass like something alive, waiting to push through. Don't go near it, she stammered. But my body moved anyway, not toward the glass, but toward the hallway phone. My hands shook as I grabbed the receiver, pressing it to my ear. Dead. No dial tone, just silence. What? I whispered, sick dread twisting in my stomach. I'm getting a knife, Lily blurted, her voice breaking as she bolted for the kitchen. Wait, I hissed, but she was already gone. My heart hammered as I crept toward the sliding glass door, every step pulled by a mix of fear and some awful curiosity. I nudged the curtain back just enough to peek out. Nothing, just the faint outlines of trees swaying in the wind. I let out a shaky exhale and turned, only to freeze. The front door. It was closed now, locked. But I knew what I'd heard. The knob moved again, slow, testing, pressing against the deadbolt. My breath caught in my throat. Lily reappeared, clutching the biggest kitchen knife we owned. Her knuckles were bone white around the handle. What do we do? She whispered, voice trembling. I opened my mouth, but before I could form words, a soft, deliberate tap came from the sliding glass door. Once, twice, like a fingernail dragging across glass. We both spun toward the sound. The curtains swayed, though the air inside was still. Lily's knuckles whitened around the knife. Another tap came, louder, sharper. My legs felt hollow, useless, but survival instinct kicked in. I grabbed Lily's arm. Upstairs, now. We ran, feet pounding the steps, the old house groaning beneath us. Shadows clung to every corner, alive in the adrenaline haze. And then, halfway up, we froze. The slow, unmistakable slide of the front door unlocking. The sound sliced through the house like a blade. Click. The deadbolt. Oh my God, Lily whispered, voice breaking. Run, I hissed, yanking her the rest of the way. We burst into my bedroom, slammed the door, hands fumbling at the lock until it clicked. My fingers trembled so hard it felt like trying to dam a flood with paper. Call 911, Lily gasped, shoving the knife at me and digging for her phone. I gripped the handle with both hands, palms slick with sweat. Every nerve strained to catch the sounds below. The front door creaked open, slow, heavy, like someone savoring every second. Lily's breath came in jagged sobs as she pressed the phone to her ear. Then, silence. Her face crumpled. No service, she whispered. The storm earlier. Dad had cursed about it messing with the towers, now it cursed us. Thud. A footstep. Measured, steady, not clumsy, not rushed. Whoever was down there wanted us to hear. I pulled Lily toward the closet. We squeezed inside, swallowed by the dark. I left a thin sliver of space in the door. Her whole body shook against me, and I pressed a finger to my lips. Don't make a sound. The footsteps climbed the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. The wood groaned like it was screaming. Then, silence. The house held its breath. My heartbeat hammered against my skull. Then a voice. Calm. Low. Almost friendly. I know you're up here. Lily's hand clamped over her mouth to stifle a sob. Not gonna hurt you, the voice coaxed. Just want to talk. Another step. Another. I gripped the knife tighter, the metal slick in my hands. My brain screamed, "Jump out the window! Run! Do something!" But my body was stone. The footsteps reached the landing. Our doorknob rattled, locked. Thank God. A soft chuckle drifted through. Smart girls. For one fragile second, hope flickered. Maybe he'd give up. Maybe. Crack. The door splintered. Once, twice. Heavy boots slammed against it, shaking the frame. Lily whimpered into my shoulder. The closet shrank around us, suffocating, coffin-like. Crash. The door burst open. Boots crunched across carpet. His breathing was steady, unhurried. He knew he had time. A shadow fell across the thin line of light in front of us. The closet handle moved. I raised the knife, every muscle screaming. The door slid open. Light spilled in. A face appeared, pale, sharp-boned, eyes far too calm. He smiled, almost pleased. Found you. I swung, wild, desperate. The blade slashed his arm. He cursed, jerking back. That was the opening. Run! I screamed, shoving Lily forward. We barreled out, brushing past him, feet pounding down the hall, down the stairs. My bare feet slid on the hardwood, but I didn't stop. The front door gaped wide, the night yawning black beyond it. We didn't look back. Didn't dare. Cold air stabbed my lungs as we tore across the yard screaming. Porch lights flicked on. Dogs barked. Somewhere, a neighbor shouted. I couldn't even register the words. By the time police arrived, he was gone, like smoke. All they found were muddy boot prints trailing through the house and out the back. No fingerprints. No car. Nothing. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep without the lights on. Lily refused to be alone, even in daylight. Mom and Dad never left us by ourselves again. Not that we'd have let them. And me? I still hear it sometimes, in the dead of night. The slow creak of a door, the whisper of boots on carpet, that calm voice drifting through the dark. I know you're up here. Because whoever he was never caught, and I don't think he ever stopped looking. I never imagined moving out on my own would turn into one of the most unsettling choices of my life. Early summer 2013, I was 23, finally ready for a clean start. I had just landed a steady job at a logistics company, and with some savings tucked away, I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom in a suburban town called Brookfield Heights. The place wasn't fancy, plain white walls, thin gray carpet, and the lingering scent of old paint that clung to everything. But it was mine, and that independence was something I'd craved for years. My parents, who lived about an hour away in a quiet rural town, drove up on a bright Saturday to help me move in. I still remember watching their car disappear after the last box was carried inside. My mom hugged me so tightly before leaving, whispering, "Call us any time, no matter what." My dad just gave a firm nod and said, "You'll be fine, kiddo." When the engine noise faded, I stood alone in the middle of my cramped living room. Cardboard boxes stacked around me, my chest swelling with pride, and if I'm honest, a flicker of nerves about being on my own for the first time. That very first afternoon, while unpacking dishes, I heard a heavy thump from above. I froze mid-step, waiting. Then another, louder, like something solid crashing against the floor. I shook it off. Someone upstairs moving furniture, maybe dropping a box. Normal apartment noise. Or so I told myself. But the sounds didn't stop. Over the following weeks, they only grew stranger. Heavy stomping. Sudden bangs so violent that the ceiling light above me trembled. Sometimes it was like someone was hurling furniture against the walls. I'd be curled on my couch with a book when the whole ceiling groaned as if under impact. I tried to shrug it off. Apartment living comes with noise, I kept repeating. But then the shouting started. At first muffled arguments, then escalating into screaming matches that made the hair on my arms prickle. A man and a woman, his voice low and furious, hers sharp and defiant, but laced with something that sounded too much like fear. It didn't matter if it was mid-afternoon or the dead of night. Their fights tore through the walls. One night around 12:30 a.m., lying in bed scrolling my phone, I heard it again. Worse this time. A man's voice thundered, "You walk out that door and you'll regret it." A woman snapped back, "Move! Get out of my way!" Her voice cracked at the edges. Then, bang! A crash so loud it shook my bed frame. Glass shattered somewhere above me. My heart leapt cold and fast. I bolted upright, phone gripped in my palm, debating if I should call the police. Before I could act, hurried footsteps thundered above me. A door flung open. Someone sprinted down the upstairs hallway. Then the main building door slammed, echoing into sudden silence. I sat frozen, pulse drumming in my ears, until curiosity clawed at me. I pulled on a hoodie, shoved my feet into sneakers, and cracked my door open. The hallway smelled faintly acrid, like something scorched. I crept up the staircase, each step groaning under my weight, until I had a partial view of their apartment. The door was ajar, shadows spilling out from inside. Then he appeared. A man, tall, mid-30s, dark, messy hair clinging damp to his forehead, a thin scar cutting down his jawline. His eyes locked onto mine instantly. Predatory. Unblinking. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was sharp, venom behind every syllable. My throat tightened, but I forced words out. I heard yelling. Is everything okay?" He stood in the doorway, chest heaving like he'd just sprinted miles, eyes narrowing at me. "Everything's fine. Mind your own business." Before I could respond, slam. He shoved the door shut with such force the frame rattled, leaving me staring at the peeling paint, heart hammering hard enough to ache. I stood there frozen for what felt like forever, my pulse crashing in my ears so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Finally, I forced myself to move, backing away one slow step at a time until I slipped back into my apartment. The lock clicked into place and I leaned against the door, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. That night, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the pipes, every faint shift in the building made me jolt upright. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. Should I have called the police? What if someone had really been hurt? But then another thought drilled into me. What if that man figured out it was me who called? What if he came for me? The next few days were unnervingly calm. No stomping, no screaming, no crashes from upstairs. I told myself maybe she'd left him. Maybe she'd escaped whatever nightmare I'd overheard. Maybe it was finally over. I was wrong. 2 nights later, deep asleep, a loud thud right outside my door snapped me awake. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone, padding quietly to the peephole. At first, the hallway was empty. Then I saw them. 2 men, broad-shouldered, both in dark hoodies, striding toward the stairwell. I knew instantly they weren't neighbors. Their steps were too purposeful, too heavy, like they weren't here for a friendly visit. A sick weight dropped in my stomach. The outside door was supposed to be locked. How had they gotten in? Did someone let them inside? Or did they have a key? After a few minutes they left, and I exhaled shakily, relief pouring out of me. But not even 10 minutes later, the downstairs door slammed again, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy boots pounding up the staircase. I froze, My eye pressed to the peephole once more. The same two men. This time the man from upstairs came down to meet them. Their voices started low, too muffled to catch. Then it erupted. One of the strangers grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. My wall, so hard the frame of my door rattled. My throat clenched on a scream. "You ever go near my sister again, I swear to God I'll cut your throat," one of them roared, his words so sharp they seemed to slice the air. "Wait, please," the upstairs man stammered, his voice breaking with panic. Then came the blows. Heavy, sickening thuds of fists striking flesh. His groans, ragged and desperate, spilled into the hallway, punctuated by pleas that went unanswered. I dropped to the floor, crouched low, hands clamped over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My heart was pounding so violently I swore they'd hear it through the wood. I didn't dare look again. All I could do was listen. The crack of bone, the dull smack of fists, the muffled cries, each one carving into my brain. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the violence stopped. Footsteps retreated, slow at first, then fading. The downstairs door slammed, echoing through the silence that followed. I stayed curled on the floor, trembling, unable to move. Inches away, just beyond that thin slab of wood, a man had been beaten and threatened with death. And I had done nothing. Should I call the cops now? The question burned in my mind. But what if they came back? What if they knew it was me? My hands shook so badly I couldn't even dial. Fear won that night. 2 days later, the upstairs man was gone. No goodbye, no movers, no explanations, just vanished. His door stood empty. When my lease ended, I didn't renew. I didn't care about the penalty or the hassle. I couldn't breathe in that place anymore. Not with those memories etched into the walls. Now, years later, I live in a small condo in a quiet neighborhood. No shared walls, no footsteps in the hall, no strangers outside my door. Still, on some nights when the world feels too silent, I hear it again. That echo. "If you ever go near my sister again, I'll cut your throat." The words, the fists against the wall by my door, they never left me. They never will. I was 13 the night everything shifted for me. Life wasn't perfect back then, but it felt steady enough, safe, or at least I believed it was. My name is Ethan Ward, and in the fall of 2004, I lived with my dad, Carl, and my older brother, Ryan, in a cramped duplex on the edge of Fairgrove, Illinois. The place was nothing remarkable, just a weathered yellow duplex at the far end of a quiet street. The backyard was tiny, hemmed in by a leaning wooden fence that looked like one good storm could knock it over. Inside, space was tight. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a little living room, and a kitchen with peeling vinyl floors that stuck to your socks if you walked barefoot. Ryan, being 17 and acting like he was king of the world, claimed a room for himself. That left me sharing a room with Dad. It wasn't ideal, but it was what I knew. Our house always carried this feeling of impermanence, like we were only squatting in someone else's life. Maybe that was because of Mom. She walked out when I was 8, and since then, nothing ever felt grounded. Dad buried himself in work at the garage. Ryan practically lived anywhere but home, and most nights it was just me and the buzz of the old box TV filling the silence. This Saturday night in late October wasn't supposed to be any different. The air outside had that sharp autumn chill, the kind that made each breath feel like glass in your lungs. By the time dinner was done, the sky was black and the house had sunk into its usual stillness. Dad left around 8, muttering something about meeting the guys for beers, while Ryan had already vanished earlier in the afternoon. Before Dad headed out, he poked his head into the living room where I sat cross-legged on the carpet, PlayStation controller in hand. "You good here, kiddo?" he asked while tugging on his jacket. "Yeah," I mumbled, eyes glued to the TV. Resident Evil's menu screen glowed in front of me, its tinny music seeping into the room. "Lock the front door after me," he said, jingling his keys, "and don't stay up too late." I nodded, though we both knew I'd ignore that last part. The door clicked shut, his old Chevy rattled to life, and then it was gone down the street. The silence that followed wasn't new. I'd been left alone plenty of times. At 13, I told myself I liked it. No rules, no nagging, no one hogging the remote. Still, when the house went really quiet, a knot always twisted in my stomach. I ignored it, turned back to the game, and let the hours blur away into a haze of pixelated zombies and static screens. The glow from the TV was the only light, casting warped shadows across the carpet. Every so often, headlights from passing cars sliced through the thin curtains. By the time I finally glanced at the clock, it was 12:04 a.m. My eyes stung, my shoulders ached. I saved my progress, shut off the console, and the room collapsed into silence so thick it pressed against my skin. I stretched, rubbed my eyes, and padded barefoot down the hall toward the room Dad and I shared. The carpet felt cold under my feet, the house answering with the occasional creak of its bones. Nothing unusual, I told myself. Just night sounds. I left the bedroom door open like always. I liked knowing when Dad or Ryan came home. Sliding under the thin blanket, I pulled it up to my chin and let my thoughts drift until sleep began tugging me under. Then, shk. The sound was so sudden, so sharp, it ripped me awake in an instant. The grinding scrape of our old sliding glass door being forced open. My eyes snapped open, my body locked rigid. For a second, I tried to convince myself it was a dream, just some leftover fragment of whatever I'd been slipping into. But then came it again. Thump, thump. Slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the kitchen's cracked linoleum. My heart slammed so hard it filled my ears with its pounding. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Dad never came in that way. Neither did Ryan. That door was a nightmare to open. The frame warped. The track rusted. Even I had to throw my whole weight into it just to get it moving. So who the hell had just slid it open like that? I held my breath. Every nerve in my body pulled tight. The footsteps moved into the living room, heavy enough to make the floorboards groan. Whoever it was didn't even try to be quiet. They just walked. Then, nothing. A silence so deep it pressed against my skull. I could hear the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the faint ringing in my ears from pure panic. Then the bathroom light flicked on. A harsh yellow glow spilled down the hallway, cutting into the dark of my room. I was lying on my side, staring straight at the doorway, eyes wide and unblinking. In that narrow strip of hallway, I saw him. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, nothing but a shadow drifting past my room. He didn't look in, didn't hesitate, just kept moving until he disappeared into the bathroom. The sink hissed on, then off again. The light stayed burning. I buried my face into the pillow, fighting to keep even my breathing silent. My mind screamed at me to move, to do anything, but my body refused to listen. Then he moved again, into Ryan's room this time. Drawers scraped open, clothes and papers hit the floor. A grunt, low, frustrated. What the hell was he looking for? The phone sat useless in the kitchen, just a few feet from him. The front door was blocked by the living room. My bedroom window was painted shut. Every option circled back to him. So I stayed frozen. Minutes dragged, stretching into something endless. Then, footsteps again. Back past my door, living room, bathroom, Ryan's room, over and over, pacing like a caged animal. His breathing grew harsher each pass, ragged, edged with anger. Why wasn't he leaving? Why hadn't he checked my room? And then it hit me, sudden and brutal. He already knew I was here. I felt it in the pause outside my door, just a fraction too long. Felt it in the weight of his steps. He was playing with me. 20 agonizing minutes scraped by. My muscles burned from staying rigid. My throat was sandpaper, but I didn't dare swallow. Every sound, the boards creaking, his breath rasping, slammed into me like it was happening inches from my face. Finally, shk, the sliding door again. He was leaving. I didn't move. Not for another 10 minutes. The silence was unbearable, my heart still jackhammering in my chest. When I finally forced myself upright, my shirt clung to me, drenched in sweat. I crept through the house, legs trembling, every corner a threat. The back door was shut tight, locked. Nothing missing, nothing touched, except Ryan's room, torn apart like someone had searched it with urgency. I never closed my eyes again that night. When Dad came stumbling home around 6, I ran straight into him, words tumbling out of my mouth. At first he chuckled, ruffling my hair, saying I must have been dreaming. But when I wouldn't let it go, when I insisted, his expression shifted. He knelt, his eyes hard. "Ethan," he said, voice sharp but steady. "Nobody was here. You hear me? Nobody." Ryan staggered in around 9, reeking of weed and cheap cologne. I accused him, begged him to admit it. But he swore it wasn't him, dumped his drawers on the floor to prove nothing was missing. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. The scariest part isn't that a stranger was in our house. It's that he wanted something. And for reasons I'll never understand, he didn't want me. I was 21 years old when it happened, and even now, years later, the memory still ties a cold knot in my gut. At the time, I had just moved out of my parents' house, first taste of real independence. My new apartment wasn't anything special, a small one-bedroom unit on the ground floor of a quiet suburban neighborhood called Brookhaven Terrace. It was the kind of place that looked safe, too safe. The rent was cheap, the neighbors were polite but kept to themselves, and it was calm enough that I didn't think twice about things like locking every window or checking behind me when I walked to my car. I was working the evening shift at a coffee shop, usually from 3 p.m. to 11. My routine was simple. Come home, shower, grab a snack, maybe watch a show or play a game until sleep pulled me under. I felt good, free, like nothing could touch me now that I was finally on my own. But that illusion, that false sense of safety, almost got me killed. It was late spring, the kind of night where the air still holds a trace of warmth, but the breeze carries just enough coolness to make you leave the window open. My apartment didn't have air conditioning, so every night I'd crack open the bedroom window just to let some air in. The window was only a couple feet off the ground, facing a narrow side yard separated from the neighbor's place by an old wooden fence. It had a screen, sure, but not a sturdy one. Just a flimsy frame that snapped into place. Still, I remember thinking, who the hell would want to break into a place like this? That night, I stayed up later than usual, maybe 1:30 a.m., just watching random YouTube videos in bed. Eventually, my eyelids got heavy, so I plugged in my phone, set my alarm for the next morning, and let the soft night air lull me to sleep. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. What woke me wasn't a noise. It was a smell, cigarette smoke, sharp and intrusive like it didn't belong there. My eyes fluttered open slowly, still half dreaming, disoriented. At first, I figured maybe it was drifting down from the balcony above. My neighbor smoked sometimes, but this was different. It was strong, heavy, close. Then I heard it, the soft scrape of something against wood. And then, a breath. Not mine. I froze. I reached out blindly toward the lamp on my nightstand, and that's when my hand brushed against something. Warm skin. A shoulder. I stopped breathing. My heart jackhammered in my chest as my brain scrambled to catch up. I yanked my hand back and stared into the dark. There was a man. He was sitting on the edge of my bed. A complete stranger, shirtless, smoking, just watching. Me. For a moment, neither of us moved. He didn't speak, didn't even flinch. Just sat there like he belonged, as calm as if he'd lived there for years. His eyes were unfocused, glassy, dark circles under them like he hadn't slept in days. Every few seconds, the tip of the cigarette glowed red, casting a flicker of light across his face. He looked empty, like something important had been scooped out of him. I remember whispering, barely able to form the words. "What the hell? Who are you? Get out." He tilted his head, almost like he was curious, or amused. Then, in a low, scratchy voice, he said, "Didn't mean to wake you." Those 5 words turned my blood to ice. The way he said it, so casual, so normal. Like this was something he did all the time. I screamed. Instinct kicked in. I lunged up, shoving him hard with both hands. "Get out! Get the hell out of here!" He stumbled back, more surprised than angry. Then, in 2 quick, practiced motions, he slipped toward the window. He didn't even look at the door. Just grabbed the screen, yanked it aside, and vanished into the night like smoke. I slammed the window shut so hard the glass rattled. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I shoved the lock into place and dragged my bookcase in front of it. Then I just stood there, muscles locked, staring at the dark pane of glass, half expecting his face to reappear on the other side. It took me a long time to build up the nerve to even look outside. When I finally did, heart hammering, I saw the window screen, leaning neatly against the wall, like he'd taken the time to remove it carefully, like he planned to come back. He'd taken the screen off without bending the frame or making a sound. That terrified me more than anything, because it meant he'd done this before. Maybe not to me, but somewhere. Someone. He knew what he was doing. I didn't sleep at all that night, not even for a second. I didn't sit down either, just paced the apartment with every single light on, gripping my phone like a lifeline, flinching at every creak or shadow until the sun finally rose. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to think rationally, but the thought wouldn't stop spinning in my head. He was inside my room, watching me sleep. The next morning in the daylight, everything looked so normal it almost broke me. The breeze, the quiet street, the way the light poured through the window like nothing had happened. For a moment, I honestly started to wonder if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But then I saw it, the screen, leaning against the side of the building, right where he left it. Like a calling card. It wasn't a dream. It happened. I told my landlord first. He barely looked up from whatever he was doing and just said, "Well, you should keep your windows locked from now on." No concern. No offer to install better locks. Just that. The police came, took a report, asked a few questions. I gave them every detail I could remember. They nodded a lot, scribbled things down, and told me to call if anything else happened. But nothing came of it. No leads, no follow-ups. And then 2 weeks later, it did happen again. Only this time, it was worse. It was a Saturday, and my parents were out of town for a family thing I had to skip because of work. My siblings were still in school during the week, so the weekend was mine, just me in the apartment, alone. Around 10 a.m., I was in the living room sitting at my main PC and gaming like I always did when I had time off. Even after moving out, I'd stuck to my old habit. No electronics in the bedroom, just like when I lived at home. So, all my gaming happened out there, in the open. I had headphones on, not blaring, just enough to zone in. I barely heard the click. At first, I thought it was part of the game or my imagination. Then I heard it again. Click. Clack. The unmistakable sound of a door handle turning and then slowly opening. I spun around so fast I almost knocked over my chair. The front door was wide open. Wide. Open. I froze. For a second, my brain tried to make it make sense. Did my parents come back early? Did they forget to tell me? I called out, "Mom? Dad?" Nothing. Just silence. I grabbed my phone and texted them. "Still out of town. Won't be back until Monday." Every hair on my body stood straight up. I walked toward the door, heart pounding, each step feeling like it took an hour. I expected someone to be standing there, or running away, but oddly nothing. The driveway was empty, no cars, no people. The street was still. I shut the door, locked it, then deadbolted it. I tried telling myself I must have forgotten to lock it after taking the trash out earlier, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. Then I heard it. A zipper. That soft, unmistakable sound of a zipper being pulled coming from down the hall, from my bedroom. Every rational instinct screamed, "Get out!" But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was shock. Maybe denial. But I walked, slowly, toward the hallway. My bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. My breath caught in my throat. Everything looked normal. The bed was made. Lights off, curtains drawn. Then I noticed the garment rack. A temporary one I'd been using because my old closet had mold issues. It had a thin zip-up fabric cover and it was slightly out of place. Zizz up. Another zipper pull. Louder this time. Closer. My legs moved before my brain could stop them. I stepped closer, hand trembling as I reached out. I gripped the zipper and pulled it down just an inch, and saw him. Curled up, inside, the rack, cramped, silent, holding a knife. His face lit up like he'd been waiting. He smiled, just a little, and whispered, "Hey." That was all I needed. I ran. I didn't think. I just turned and sprinted down the hall, slamming my bedroom door behind me, grabbing the landline from the living room. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice before finally getting the front door locked behind me. I stumbled onto the front lawn and called 911 from the driveway, voice cracking as I sobbed into the phone. "There's someone inside my house." The cops arrived within minutes, but it felt like forever. I stood barefoot in the street, shaking and crying, watching as they went in with weapons drawn. And when they brought him out, handcuffed, head lowered, my knees buckled. It was him, the same man from my bedroom 2 weeks earlier. He didn't resist, didn't shout, didn't look scared or angry. He just looked empty. Like none of it mattered. Like getting caught was just another thing on his to-do list. One of the officers told me later, gently, trying not to scare me further, that they found him searching the house, looking for me. I think about that every single night. What if I hadn't heard the zipper? What if I'd gone to bed early? What if I hadn't been in the living room? Would I even be here to tell the story? I don't live on the ground floor anymore. I don't sleep with my windows open. Hell, sometimes I still check my closets and under the bed, twice, before I sleep. Because once something like that happens to you, once you know for sure that the worst can happen, you never really feel safe again. I still remember the weight of her when she was first placed in my arms. 7 pounds of fragile, trembling life wrapped in a pink hospital blanket. Her tiny hand curled instinctively around my finger, and in that instant, something inside me shifted forever. Her name is Lena. That was the moment I understood my existence had changed. Everything I'd been before suddenly felt irrelevant. From then on, she was the reason I breathed. But life didn't deal us a fair hand. When Lena was 5, her mother, my wife, was taken from us in an instant. A brain aneurysm. No warning, no time to prepare, just a phone call that shattered everything. People say time heals as if it's a cure-all, as if the passing of days stitches wounds closed. What they don't say is that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean the ache fades when the house goes quiet at night and the shadows remind you of what's missing. After that, Lena and I became each other's lifelines. We leaned on each other, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, just trying to keep moving when the world felt crueler than it should. But that bond came with something I never expected. Fear. Not the ordinary fear of parenthood, but a relentless, suffocating terror that something would happen to her too. At first, it was just background noise. What ifs I could push aside. But then it got louder, clawing its way into everything. I couldn't let her out of my sight without feeling my chest tighten. It changed me as a father. No field trips. Birthday parties only if I knew every parent, every exit, every detail. A quick trip to the grocery store? Not a chance. She came with me everywhere. When she was small, it was manageable. She didn't know life could be different. But kids grow. They want space, independence. By the time Lena turned 13, I could see her frustration building like pressure in a pipe. The way her face tensed every time I said no. The sighs when I hovered too long. The conversations we didn't have because my fear locked my mouth shut. It all came to a head one Saturday morning. I needed milk. Like always, I called for her shoes. She looked up from her laptop exasperated. "Dad, can you please just go? I'm in the middle of something." I hesitated, keys in hand. "It'll only take a few minutes." "Come on." She snapped her laptop shut. "Why can't you trust me to be alone for 20 minutes? I forced a weak smile. "I do trust you. I just don't want you by yourself. I'm not a baby, Dad." Her voice cracked, frustration spilling out, and it hit me harder than I expected. That night I sat on the couch with the TV flickering in silence, my mind replaying her words. Was I breaking something between us? Probably. Fear doesn't listen to reason, though. Fear makes you believe that letting go is the same as losing. Months passed in that tug-of-war between my panic and her need for freedom. Eventually, sleepless nights wore me down, and I decided she deserved some space even if it killed me inside. One afternoon, she was at the kitchen table doing homework. I walked in and said, "I'm going to Target for a few things." She groaned and started to close her notebook, ready to grab her shoes. But I raised my hand. "No, Lena, stay. I'll go alone." The way her face lit up, I'll never forget it. A smile bloomed, wide and unrestrained, the kind that makes your chest ache because you realize how long they've been waiting for this moment and how long you've kept it from them. It was a milestone for her, for me too. I got in the car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, and pulled out of the driveway. My heart pounded like I was abandoning her on an island. Halfway to Target, I almost turned back, but I forced myself forward. By the time I parked, my panic had dulled into a low, throbbing ache. Inside, I grabbed a greeting card and walked the aisles, muttering under my breath like a prayer. "She's fine. She's safe. Everything's okay." Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, already smiling, thinking she wanted me to pick up snacks. I swiped to answer, but all I heard was screaming. High-pitched, panicked, raw screaming that ripped straight through me. "Lena?" My voice shook. "Baby, what's happening?" She was sobbing, choking on her words. I don't know, I think, oh God, I think someone..." The line erupted with another scream, then a deafening crash of something shattering. I didn't remember dropping the card. I didn't remember leaving the cart. I only remember running, keys clenched in my fist, heart exploding in my chest, as I tore through the sliding doors and into the parking lot. By the time I hit the driver's seat, I was already shouting into the phone. "Are you hurt? Lena, answer me, are you hurt?" "Yes," she sobbed. Her voice was ragged, frantic. There's blood." I didn't wait for more. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat, slammed the gas pedal to the floor, and tore down the street. Stoplights bled together into streaks of red and white, meaningless. My mind spun through every nightmare at once. Someone breaking in, someone hurting her, someone taking her away forever. Then blue and red lights flared in my rearview mirror. A siren wailed. 2 blocks from home. Just 2 blocks. I had a choice. Stop, waste precious minutes explaining, or keep going and pray they understood later. To anyone else, maybe it's a debate. To a parent, it's not a choice at all. I floored it. The siren screamed behind me as I swung onto our street and skidded into the driveway. Tires shrieked. I barely remembered pulling the keys from the ignition before I was out of the car, hands in the air shouting, my daughter's inside. She's hurt." The cops spilled out, weapons raised, commands pelting me from all sides. My voice cracked as I screamed again, "Please! She's inside! Help her!" One officer, tall with a crew cut, froze mid-step. His gun was still trained on me, but something in my eyes must have convinced him I wasn't lying. He barked an order to his partner, "Cover him!" and snatched the keys from my shaking hand. Those next 60 seconds stretched into eternity. I stood in the driveway, arms up, trembling so violently my teeth clicked together, praying I hadn't already lost her. Then the front door burst open. The officer emerged, his hand guiding Lena out by the shoulders. Blood streaked down her arm and cheek. Her eyes were wide, feral with terror. But she was walking. She was breathing. I broke apart right there on the driveway, knees buckling as relief punched the air out of me. "Ambulance!" the cop shouted to his partner, then turned to me. "She's cut, but she's okay. You need to stay put." I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on Lena, whispering over and over, "You're okay. You're okay, you're okay," like a prayer I didn't know I'd been saying. Later at the hospital, after stitches, after antiseptic, after her breathing slowed enough that I could breathe too, I finally got the full story. She'd been making a sandwich. A glass of water sat on the counter beside her. Out of nowhere, it exploded, spraying shards across the kitchen. At the same moment, she heard a deafening bang from next door. Our neighbor, drunk, had decided to clean his gun without checking if it was loaded. The bullet punched through our wall and shattered the glass, embedding shards into Lena's skin. A miracle she wasn't killed. A few inches to the left, and I'd be planning her funeral instead of signing hospital paperwork. As for me, I spent that night in a holding cell for fleeing a traffic stop. Later, after the judge heard the circumstances, the charge was reduced to a fine. None of that mattered. What mattered was this. I had finally loosened my grip on my fear, given her a taste of freedom, and fate almost stole her anyway. That thought haunted me. It crawled into my chest at night, whispered at the edges of sleep. For months, I lived with it, gnawing at me. Eventually, I broke. Therapy became a lifeline. Week after week, piece by piece, it chipped away at the panic that had ruled me for years. I'm not cured. I still worry, I always will. But I learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Fear doesn't keep the people we love safe. It only makes the time we have with them smaller, narrower, until there's nothing left. Lena's 20 now. She lives downtown in an apartment with more windows than I'll ever be comfortable with. We talk every day. I still feel the words press against my teeth. Lock your door. Text me when you get home. Don't stay out too late. But I bite them back. Because loving someone isn't about locking the world out. It's about letting them live, even when every cell in your body is screaming to hold on. And God, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. I was 17 the night everything shifted. The night I stopped believing bad things only happened somewhere else. Early autumn, our street looked like a postcard. Quiet, safe, lined with identical two-story houses where neighbors waved at each other but mostly kept to themselves. The kind of neighborhood people described as, "Nothing ever happens here." I'd told myself that too, and I believed it. That morning, my parents had flown to Vancouver to see some old friends from when Dad worked there. They'd be gone for a week. My older brother Daniel was away at college, 2 states over. For the first time in years, the house was mine alone. It didn't scare me. Honestly, I liked it. I'd been staying home by myself since I was 12, and now at 17 I felt more than capable. Still, my parents wouldn't let it go. "Keep the alarm on every night," Mom had said at least 3 times. "Lock all the doors. Call us if you need anything." Yeah, I got it, I told her, rolling my eyes but secretly liking the way they cared. To make the empty house feel less lonely, I'd invited Alex over. He was one of my closest friends, practically family, the kind of guy you could sit in silence with and not feel awkward. We ordered pizza, spread junk food across the coffee table, and planned to marathon movies until we passed out. For a while it felt perfect. 2 kids with no supervision laughing at dumb comedies, sugar buzzing in our veins. Then around 9:30 his phone lit up. He frowned at the screen. Shit, he muttered. My mom needs me to come home tonight. Something about an early appointment tomorrow. I tried not to let the disappointment show, but it slipped into my voice. You serious? Dude, you promised you'd stay. I know, he said, already pulling on his jacket. I'll come back tomorrow. It's just one night. You'll be fine. Yeah, whatever. Drive safe. By 10, he was gone, and the house felt bigger, emptier. Just me and Luna, my 20-pound cocker spaniel, curled in a ball on the couch like nothing in the world could ever bother her. I shot my mom a quick text. Alex left. Looks like it's just me tonight. Her reply came instantly. Okay, sweetie. Just keep the alarm on and don't forget to lock up. Love you. Love you too. Good night. I brushed my teeth, changed into pajamas, and decided to crash in my parents' room. They had the massive flat screen with full cable, way better than the sad handful of channels in my room. Before heading up, I double-checked every door, set the alarm, then slipped into their ridiculously comfortable bed. Luna hopped up beside me, nestling at my feet. For a while, everything felt normal. Safe. I flipped channels until I landed on some late-night movie. 45 minutes passed and my eyelids grew heavy. That's when it happened. The house alarm exploded. A piercing screech ripped through every room, echoing in my bones. My heart froze mid-beat. For 15 seconds, maybe longer, I couldn't move. Just stared at the red light flashing on the alarm panel by the door. My brain scrambled for answers. A glitch? A door left open? But I'd locked everything. I'd set the alarm. No one had keys but my parents, my brother, and me. Alex had texted he was already home. So if the alarm was going off, someone had broken in. The thought hit like ice water down my spine. Snapping out of it, I leapt off the bed and slammed the bedroom door shut, fumbling the lock with shaking hands. The alarm wailed on and I let it, praying it would scare whoever was inside, knowing the system would call the police in under a minute. Then I remembered Mom's nightstand. The revolver. She always kept it loaded, just in case. I'd never touched it before. Never even wanted to. But right then, it felt like the only thing between me and whatever waited beyond that door. My fingers trembled as I yanked the drawer open. There it was. Cold steel. Heavy. Real. Loaded. I flicked off the safety like I'd seen people do in movies, the motion clumsy in my shaking hands. The weight of the revolver surprised me, heavier than I imagined, solid and final. I knelt on the carpeted floor of my parents' bedroom, both hands gripping it tight, arms stiff as I aimed at the door. I couldn't believe what I was doing. Me, 17, pointing a gun at a locked door, fully prepared to pull the trigger if someone came through. In my head, I repeated the same words like a mantra. Stay calm, don't panic, don't make a sound. 2 minutes dragged by like hours. The alarm shrieked on, stabbing through the silence between each thud of my heartbeat. My palms were slick with sweat, the gun slippery in my grip. Finally, forcing my breath steady, I reached for my phone with one trembling hand and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I whispered, barely audible. My house alarm just went off. I'm home alone. I'm in my parents' bedroom with the door locked. The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady, grounding me. Okay, I need you to stay on the line with me. We've got officers on the way. Do not leave that room. Do you understand? Yes, I breathed, tightening my grip on the gun, pressing the phone to my ear. Every creak in the house sounded amplified, like footsteps pacing just beyond the door. Luna stirred once, lifting her head, ears perked, then laid back down with a sigh. That tiny, ordinary gesture calmed me more than I expected. Minutes blurred, each one stretched thin until the dispatcher finally said, "They're outside now." I didn't move until I heard the knock at the front door. Even then, I hesitated, reluctant to unlock anything. I finally shoved the revolver back into the nightstand, silenced the alarm, and crept downstairs to let the officers in. They came inside, flashlights cutting through the dark corners, asking me a string of calm but pointed questions. After checking the outside of the house, one of them shook his head. No signs of forced entry. Then he looked at me. "Do you want us to sweep the inside of the house?" And here's the part that still haunts me. I said no. "I think it's okay." My voice sounded small, hollow. They promised to patrol the neighborhood for a while and told me to call again if anything happened. After they left, I locked the door hard behind them and called my parents. Mom's voice was calm, measured, the way it always was in emergencies. Dad's voice, though, cracked with panic. They asked if I wanted them to come home early, and I said no, though part of me wanted to beg them to get on the next flight. I was about to reset the alarm when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The system wouldn't arm. That only happened if a door wasn't fully closed. My heart started pounding again. Slowly, I picked up the revolver, my fingers damp on the metal grip, and walked through the house. Every door was shut, locked, just as I remembered, until I reached the one leading to the garage. It was wide open. I froze in the doorway, the kind of stillness that makes your skin crawl. Someone had definitely opened it. Gun raised, I stepped into the garage, flicking the light switch with my elbow. Harsh yellow light spilled across the concrete. I swept my aim across the space. Nothing. Both windows intact. No broken glass, no damage, no sign of a break-in. But that door had been wide open. I slammed it shut, locked it, reset the alarm. Then I searched everywhere. Closets, under beds, every corner of the house, my body trembling with each turn of a doorknob. Nothing. That night I slept in my parents' bed with the door locked and the gun under my pillow, every sound pulling me back awake. For the rest of the week, I couldn't relax. Every shadow felt wrong. When my parents finally came home, my dad inspected the house from top to bottom. He found nothing. No damage to the garage windows, no forced entry. His theory, maybe the garage door hadn't latched properly, and a draft blew it open. But I know what I felt that night. The alarm didn't go off by accident. That door didn't open itself. 6 years later, I still think about it, the what-ifs. What if we hadn't had the alarm? What if I hadn't found the gun? What if whoever opened that door hadn't left when the siren screamed? It's why I'll never sleep in an empty house again without checking every lock, twice. And it's why, no matter what anyone says, I know something was there that night. Watching. Waiting. I never thought something as ordinary as staying home alone could twist into the most terrifying night of my life. My name's Lucas. I'm 16. And if you'd asked me 3 months ago whether I believed real danger could be lurking right outside your own house, I would have laughed. Our neighborhood always felt untouchable. Quiet streets, neat lawns, families who waved every time they drove by. Oak Ridge Estates was supposed to be safe. Bad things didn't happen here. At least, that's what I used to believe. That night changed everything. It started on a Saturday morning. My parents were buzzing through the house, trying to get ready for a family friend's wedding out of town. The kind of wedding where you dress up, take endless photos, and dance until your feet blister. They asked if I wanted to come, but the thought of spending hours in a suit, stuck in conversations about mortgages and vacation homes, sounded like pure torture. "You sure you don't want to come?" Mom asked again by the front door, her purse sliding down her shoulder. The air was thick with her strong, flowery perfume. "Positive," I said, trying not to roll my eyes. "I'll be fine, Mom. Seriously." Dad's laugh floated from the hallway as he fixed his tie in the mirror. "He's 16, honey. I think he can handle one night alone." "Exactly," I added with a grin. "And I've got Coco, Max, and Diesel. Nobody's messing with us." Those dogs weren't just pets, they were family. Coco, our golden retriever, was gentle and clingy, practically my shadow. Max and Diesel were pit bulls, all muscle and intimidation to anyone who didn't know better. To me, though, they were oversized clowns who thought they were lapdogs. even though together they outweighed most of my friends. Mom still looked uneasy. "Call me if you need anything, and Lucas, don't open the door for anyone, I mean it." "I won't," I promised. She hesitated a moment longer, then leaned in, kissed my forehead, and finally followed Dad out. I stood at the window, watching their car disappear down the street. The silence that followed settled heavy on the house. Too big, too quiet. But I liked it. No rules, no nagging. Just me, my dogs, and Netflix. I made a bowl of popcorn, cracked open a soda, and collapsed onto the couch. The dogs spread out around the living room. Max and Diesel stretched across the rug like two lazy bodyguards while Coco curled against my side. It felt like the perfect night. Movies, snacks, scrolling my phone, even squeezing in a few rounds on my PlayStation. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Around 8:30 p.m., I decided to let the dogs out before starting another movie. I slid the glass door open and whistled. "Go on, guys. Do your thing." Max and Diesel charged outside, tails wagging while Coco padded out more cautiously. The cool night air drifted in, carrying the faint smell of rain. I lingered in the doorway, watching them nose around the yard. Then it started, the barking. Sharp, aggressive, not their goofy, excited bark. This was different, a warning. My stomach tightened. I stepped closer to the glass, scanning the dim yard. The motion light blinked on, flooding the grass in pale light. Max and Diesel froze, muscles stiff, teeth bared, their gaze locked on the back fence. And that's when I saw her. A woman stood just beyond the fence, half swallowed by shadow. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Thin, about 5'5". Her brown hair hung in messy clumps past her shoulders. Even from a few feet away, I swear I caught the stale reek of cigarettes clinging to her clothes. "You have such beautiful dogs," she said. Her voice rasped low, like gravel, and her smile stretched too wide, too forced. "Can I pet them?" My pulse hammered in my throat. Sorry," I called back quickly, keeping the glass between us. "They don't really like strangers." Her smile faltered, slowly, her eyes fixed on me, and the way she looked at me, God, I can still see it. Like I'd just insulted her, like she despised me. Forcing a shaky smile, I cracked the door just enough to whistle the dogs inside. The second their paws hit the tile, I yanked the door shut and slammed the lock. My fingers checked it twice, then a third time. When I looked back toward the fence, she was gone. The yard stood empty under the motion light, grass swaying in the breeze like nothing had ever been there. My chest felt tight, and I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just being dramatic. Still, I herded the dogs into my room, the farthest one from the backyard, and locked the bedroom door behind us. My fingers fumbled with the lock, trembling so badly I had to twist it twice. I grabbed my phone and texted my mom. "Mom, some weird woman was in the backyard asking to pet the dogs." Her reply came quick. "That's strange. Probably someone from the apartments. Stay inside, okay? We'll be home late. Keep everything locked." I stared at her words, trying to breathe evenly. If she wasn't worried, maybe I shouldn't be. But the dogs told me otherwise. Max paced the room like a soldier on guard, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Diesel planted himself by the door, every muscle coiled like he was waiting for a command. Even Coco couldn't sit still, whining softly and pressing against my leg. Their unease sank into me, heavier than anything Mom's text could soothe. 20 minutes crawled by, every second dragging. Then, the doorbell rang. All three dogs erupted, barking so loud it rattled my skull. My heart slammed against my ribs. Who the hell was at the door? I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The ringing stopped. Silence. I'd just started convincing myself it was a prank, maybe some dumb kid messing around, when another sound cut through the room, clicking at my window. Slow, deliberate, like fingers testing the latch. Every muscle in my body froze. My mind screamed at me, "Don't make a sound." Sweat slid down my palms as I grabbed my phone and muted the TV. The clicking stopped. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Then, glass shattering. Not from my house, but next door. I dropped to the floor and crawled to the window, peeling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. The Hernandez place sat dark and still, except for the broken window in the back. A shadow slipped inside. Her. The same woman. I dialed 911 so fast I almost dropped the phone. 911, what's your emergency? There's a break-in, I whispered, voice shaking. My neighbor's house. Someone broke in. I saw her. Please send someone. Stay on the line, the operator said, calm but firm. Officers are on their way. How many suspects? Just one. A woman. A scream ripped through the night, sharp and desperate. My stomach lurched. I yanked the curtain wider. Mr. Hernandez burst into view, grappling with the woman in his living room. She fought like a wild animal, shrieking, clawing at his face. She's attacking him, I shouted into the phone. Oh my God, she's attacking him. Sirens wailed in the distance, a flood of relief crashing into me, but it didn't last. In the chaos, her head snapped toward my house. Her eyes found my window, found me, and she smiled. By the time the cops stormed in, Mr. Hernandez was barely holding her down. It took 2 officers and a taser, twice, to subdue her. She thrashed, spat, screamed words that made my blood run cold. I'm going to kill that boy. I'll burn his house down. Him and those dogs. They found a knife tucked in her waistband, a gun hidden in her bag. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I sat curled against the wall, clutching Max and Diesel like they were the only thing keeping me alive, Coco trembling at my feet. The police dragged her away, still cursing, still kicking, her eyes wild with fury. When my parents finally got home hours later, they found me on the floor with the dogs wrapped around me like a shield, my face stiff with dried tears. For days after, I couldn't sleep unless all 3 dogs were piled onto my bed. Every creak in the house made my chest seize, and her glare, the way her eyes burned into me from across the dark, still follows me when I close mine. If she'd chosen my house instead of the Hernandez's, I wouldn't be here telling you this. Stay safe. Lock your doors. You never know who's watching. I was 9 years old the day everything shifted. Summer vacation had just started and I felt unstoppable. No homework, no early mornings, just cartoons, cereal, and the endless stretch of freedom I thought would last forever. Both my parents had already left for work. Dad clocked in at the factory for his day shift, and Mom had a full schedule of patients at the dental office. Being home alone wasn't new, but it didn't happen often. That morning, it felt like a secret adventure, like I was being trusted with something important. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. Sunlight pushed through the blinds in pale strips. I'd just stepped out of the shower, water dripping down my neck, the sweet smell of strawberry shampoo still hanging in the steamy bathroom air. I stood on tiptoe at the sink, brushing my teeth, humming some dumb little jingle from a TV commercial I couldn't get out of my head. Afterward, I padded to my room in damp socks, rifled through drawers, and pulled on my favorite outfit, pink shorts and a unicorn t-shirt that matched perfectly. I remember smoothing the shirt down, proud of how it looked. It made me feel grown up in a way, like maybe I could pass for one of those girls smiling on the glossy covers of Mom's magazines. Satisfied, I made my way to the living room, gathering my little setup for the day, juice in a glass, a bowl of chips, the TV remote gripped in my hand. I curled into the couch cushions, letting the cartoon voices wash over me while the flickering glow splashed across the walls. Everything felt ordinary, safe, until the phone rang. The sound startled me, sharp and shrill against the soft hum of the TV. Back then, we still had a beige, cordless landline that sat charging on its base in the kitchen. It didn't usually ring in the mornings. When it did, it was almost always Mom checking in, or Dad sneaking a quick hello during his break. Without thinking, I hopped off the couch and walked across the house, the phone's second ring chasing me down the hallway. I picked it up, pressed talk, and said, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was warm, familiar even, like a safe voice, the kind that instantly lowers your guard. He said my name, asked how my morning was. Something about the tone made me feel special, cared for. I told him I was fine, that I'd just eaten breakfast, and he chuckled softly, like he really knew me. Then he asked, "What are you wearing?" At first, it didn't strike me as strange. I was 9. I thought it was small talk, the way adults sometimes ask odd questions. So I answered, "Pink shorts and a unicorn shirt." He laughed again, quieter this time. "Pink, huh? Is that your favorite color?" Something inside me shifted. The question didn't feel like the others. My stomach tightened, though I didn't know why. Not really," I mumbled. There was a pause, long enough for the hair on my arms to rise. And then his voice changed. It dropped low, jagged, like gravel grinding against glass. "You look so pretty in that pink outfit." My throat closed. My brain tripped over itself, trying to make sense of what he'd just said. How could he know? My voice came out tiny, a whisper. "What?" He laughed then, a slow, ugly sound. After that, the words he spoke were ones a child should never hear, sick and graphic. Things so twisted I can't repeat them even now, decades later. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My skin burned hot. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. Somehow I managed to slam the talk button and hang up. I just stood there, gripping the counter with damp palms, staring at the cordless phone like it might come alive and lunge at me. My thoughts spun in chaotic circles. Was it a prank? Had I imagined it? No. The sound of his voice was still crawling in my ears, raw and undeniable. He had seen me. He knew. The phone rang again. The shriek of it ripped through me, jolting every nerve. My knees wobbled, nearly gave out. I couldn't answer, couldn't move. It stopped, then started again, over and over. Each ring drilled into me until my whole body felt strung tight like a live wire. Finally, with shaking fingers, I grabbed the phone and dialed Mom at work. The moment she answered, I broke down, sobbing so hard the words tumbled out in broken fragments. "Someone's watching me. He called me. He said, Mom's voice snapped sharp, cutting through my crying, not concerned, annoyed. "Why did you answer the phone? I told you not to. Just go watch TV, stop being dramatic." "No, Mom. He knows what I'm wearing. He said he's going to." "That's enough. I can't leave work for this. Just don't answer the phone again. You're fine." She hung up before I could argue. I stared at the receiver, chest heaving, trying to breathe. Fine? I wasn't fine. Not even close. Someone could be right outside the window, maybe even inside. My gut screamed at me to run, but where would I go? I yanked the curtain shut so hard the rod rattled. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting into shapes that weren't there. Every creak of the floor sounded like a footstep behind me. And the phone, it wouldn't stop. Ring. Silence. Ring. Silence. Each pause filled with the image of him creeping closer, grinning like he had all the time in the world. I couldn't handle it. My hands shook as I dialed 911, my voice barely more than a choked whisper. "I'm home alone. Someone's watching me," he said. "He said he's going to kill me. Please. Please." The operator's voice was calm, soothing, a fragile thread in the chaos. She told me to stay on the line. That help was coming. But my mind wouldn't stop seeing him there, knife in hand, shadow stretching across my room. My skin crawled, my lungs locked, panic gripping every muscle. In blind terror, I slammed my parents' emergency alarm button by the door and bolted outside barefoot. The sunlight hit me like salvation. Birds chirped. A lawnmower hummed down the street. Summer sounded ordinary, but that phone, it was still ringing in my ears like it was alive, calling me back. A neighbor saw me and rushed over, wrapping an arm around me, pulling me close. "What happened?" he asked, and I spilled everything between sobs, words tumbling like rocks down a cliff. Then came the sirens, the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. It felt like hours, but it was only minutes before the police car pulled into the driveway. An officer crouched to my level, voice soft, asking questions I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to a grown man the things you just heard when you're 9? I left most of it out. I repeated the parts I could say. He said he was watching me. He said he was going to kill me. Then Mom arrived. Calm. Too calm. She walked into the yard like nothing had happened, smiling. And then she laughed. I froze, tears still streaking my face as she told the officer, "I'm so sorry about this." She must have gotten scared being home alone. Overreacted. Overreacted. Those words burned hotter than anything that man had said over the phone. The officer nodded. Mom laughed again. And just like that, it was over. No investigation. No questions. Just over. But for me, it wasn't over. The phone became my enemy. Every ring since sent jolts of electricity through my nerves. I refused to be home alone for years. Mom insisted it had to be some neighbor boy, a kid my age. I knew that wasn't possible, but she wouldn't hear it. Years later, at a family Christmas, I walked out of a bedroom and froze in the hallway. Mom was in the living room laughing, telling the story like it was a joke. Everyone else looked sick. My oldest daughter gently pushed me back into the room, whispering, "Don't go in there." Mom had just told them about the time a man threatened to kill me as a child. And to her it was funny. I never found out who it was, never learned how he knew what I was wearing. But even now, every time a phone rings, my stomach knots. And in the back of my mind I still wonder, did he ever stop watching me? I switched off the office light and stepped into the hallway. The upstairs felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. I went into my bedroom, turned on the bedside lamp, and started changing into sleep clothes. That's when it happened. A sound so out of place, so bone-chilling that I almost dropped my phone. Whistling, slow, soft, a tune I didn't recognize. Wee, wee, wee. It wasn't cheerful. It wasn't rushed. It was calm, deliberate, almost playful. I froze, half bent over, staring at my bedroom door. No, 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 no. I mouthed silently. My first thought, it can't be inside. It has to be outside. But as I crept closer to the door and cracked it open, the sound grew clearer, echoing faintly through the hallway. It was inside. I moved like a ghost down the stairs, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs might snap. My bare feet were silent against the carpet, but in my head every breath sounded like a scream. The whistling didn't stop. It was steady, unhurried. When I reached the bottom, I pressed my back to the wall and peered around the corner toward the living room. That's when I saw him, a man sitting in my armchair, facing the black TV screen. He didn't move except for the slow rise and fall of his shoulders. His head was slightly tilted, and his lips shaped the eerie tune that had hollowed out my chest. In the dim light, I could only make out his silhouette. But I saw something in his hand. A small metallic shape catching the faint glow from the blinds. A gun. I couldn't breathe. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs felt bolted to the floor. He had to know I was there. He had to have heard me, but he didn't turn. He just kept whistling, calm as death. I didn't think. I just moved. I bolted for the front door, ripping it open so hard it slammed the wall. Cold rain hit my skin as I ran barefoot into the night, my breath tearing out in harsh gasps. I didn't look back until I was at the end of the street, chest heaving, fingers numb as I fumbled for my phone. When I finally looked, the door to the empty unit next to mine stood wide open. The cops came fast, 2 cruisers, lights flashing red and blue against the rain. I pointed with a shaking hand, stammering through what happened. As they approached the door, the whistling started again. They could hear it too. That same slow, eerie tune drifting out into the wet night. Guns drawn. They went inside. What they found still makes my blood run cold. He was sitting in the exact same spot, same posture, same calm smile when he finally turned his head toward them. He dropped the gun without a word. Let them cuff him like it was nothing. They told me later they couldn't identify him. No fingerprints in any database, no ID, no explanation. He barely spoke a word during questioning. Some officers thought he wanted to be caught. Others thought he was mentally ill. But no one could tell me why my house, why that night, why that tune. I moved out within a week. But even now, nearly 2 years later, I'll wake in the dead of night. Hard hammering. Sure, I can hear it again. That slow, soft whistle in the dark. I was 24 the night everything shifted. The night when the familiar walls of my townhouse stopped feeling like a refuge and started to feel like something else entirely. Back then, I lived alone on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina. The kind of place where you expected dogs barking and lawnmowers humming on weekends, not fear. When I first signed the lease 6 months earlier, I told myself nothing bad could happen there. It looked safe, normal. I'd clawed my way out of a toxic relationship and had finally landed a fully remote job that paid the bills. A fresh start. That was the plan. The townhouse was simple, but mine. Downstairs, a compact kitchen and living room. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms. One I slept in, the other I turned into an office, a space that felt like proof I'd taken control of my life. My favorite part of the place was the silence. No kids screaming, no muffled bass from late-night parties bleeding through the walls. Just quiet. The unit next to me had been vacant for months, the property manager casually mentioning no one had even toured it in a long while. That fact, oddly enough, had always made me feel safer. Empty next door meant no drama, no one to overhear. It was a Friday night in late October, the kind of night when the rain fell steady and soft, like the world was wrapped in static. I was in my office upstairs, pushing myself to finish some extra tasks on my laptop. The screen glowed against the dim amber of my desk lamp, leaving the rest of the room swallowed in warm shadow. I was tired. God, I was tired. But the thought of getting ahead on work kept me going. The only sounds were the soft clicking of my keys and the occasional groan of the old townhouse settling into the night. Every now and then, I'd glance out the rain-streaked window beside me. The streetlight outside cast everything in a hazy, amber glow. Nights like this usually calmed me, made me feel safe and cocooned. That night, though, that comfort didn't last. Just after 8, I heard it. Thump. A dull, solid hit against the wall to my right. My fingers froze mid-air above the keyboard. That wall connected to the supposedly empty unit. I waited, holding my breath before shaking my head. Wind, maybe. Or the rain. I muttered, trying to believe it. But then it came again. Thump. Slower. Heavier. My pulse jumped. I whispered, "What the hell?" and stared at the blank stretch of wall like it might answer me. After a long moment, I forced a deep breath. Maybe the property manager stopped by. Maybe checking pipes or showing the unit late. Weird, yeah, but not impossible. I tried to bury myself in work again, but the noises didn't stop. They came sporadically, each one landing just when my nerves had finally begun to settle. A faint knock. A soft creak, like a floorboard bending under cautious steps. Silence. Then another sound, minutes later, dragging me back into unease. It was the irregularity that made it worse, like whoever, or whatever, was in there didn't want me to get used to it. By 9:30, something happened that made every hair on my arm stand on end. The unmistakable sound of a door opening. Slow. Then closing. Harder this time, as if pushed shut. I froze. My mind raced with reasons, explanations, anything that made sense, but nothing landed. My chest tightened until I could hear my heartbeat thudding in my ears. "That's not normal," I whispered to myself. Against every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I stood. My knees felt shaky as I stepped into the hallway. The townhouse was silent, except for the steady patter of rain against the windows. Each creak of the stairs beneath my feet sounded too loud as I descended. The living room sat in shadow, broken only by the weak glow of the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. I forced myself toward the front door and peered through the narrow glass panel. Nothing. The driveway was empty, the street quiet. No headlights, no sign of movement. "Maybe they left already," I whispered, trying to convince myself, though unease kept climbing my spine like ice water. I checked the deadbolt, still locked. The back door, too, untouched, everything in place. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the knob, listening so hard my ears ached. Nothing but the rain. Paranoid, I told myself. Houses make noises, old walls settle, that's all. I climbed back upstairs, promising myself just 30 more minutes before bed. By 10 o'clock, I finally closed my laptop, the screen dimming to black. I can still smell the wet asphalt from that night, heavy and sharp in the air, the kind of smell that makes you think the storm itself is warning everyone to stay inside. My name is Maya Carter. Back then I was 16, living with my parents in Maple Hollow, a quiet neighborhood tucked deep into the woods about an hour outside the city in North Carolina. It wasn't total wilderness, but it felt close. Houses were set far apart, with thick walls of trees pressing against every yard. At night, the dark outside didn't just fall, it swallowed everything whole. That day had been another gray Tuesday. The sky was overcast, the air damp and bone cold, the kind of weather that makes you want to pull the blankets over your head and skip existing. At school, everyone buzzed about the incoming storm, some monster system sweeping up from the coast. Tornado watches, flash flood warnings, all of it. Personally, I didn't care. My only concern was whether it would hit before I made it home. It didn't. The rain waited until I'd already walked through the front door, dropped my backpack onto the couch, and collapsed face first into the cushions. Our house was old, mostly wood, with 2 creaky floors, narrow hallways, and rooms that felt just a little too small. My bedroom was upstairs, second door on the left. Downstairs, the living room opened straight into the kitchen, with the front door just a few feet from the couch. It wasn't fancy, but it was familiar, and familiar always feels safe. Until it doesn't. When the storm finally arrived around 4:30, it didn't drift in. It attacked. Rain slammed the windows in sheets, the wind shrieked like it was alive, and the whole house groaned with each gust, wood flexing like joints under strain. I cranked the TV volume up, trying to drown it out, but my stomach twisted anyway. Then my phone buzzed, screaming with a flash flood alert. The loud blare made me jump. "Shit," I muttered, fumbling to silence it. Almost immediately, my mom called. I answered fast, trying to sound casual. "Hey, everything okay?" Her voice came tight, rushed, like she was already in the middle of a fight. "Maya, listen. Your dad and I are stuck. Half the roads are underwater, and the cops blocked off the highway. We can't make it home tonight." My chest squeezed. "Wait, what? So, you're not coming back?" "No, sweetie." I could hear her taking a breath, steadying herself. "We're going to stay at a hotel in the city. You're safe there. Just stay inside, lock the doors, and don't go near the windows, okay?" The walls creaked loudly, and I glanced at the nearest window where rain hammered the glass like a fist. Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just watch TV or something." "Good girl. We'll call when we're settled. Keep your phone close." The line clicked dead, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the storm itself. I told myself it was fine. I'd been home alone plenty of times. Just never during something like this. I wandered into the kitchen, my socks slipping a little on the polished wood. I grabbed a plate of leftover pasta from the fridge and slid it into the microwave. As it hummed and spun, I leaned on the counter, scrolling through my phone, trying not to listen to the storm ripping at the house. That's when I heard it, knocking. It was faint, muffled by the wind and rain, but distinct. A hollow thunk-thunk, like wood hitting wood. I froze, tilting my head, heart ticking up. My mind scrambled for explanations. A tree branch, debris on the porch, just the storm doing what storms do. The microwave beeped behind me and I flinched so hard I laughed at myself. "Get it together, Maya," I whispered. "Just the wind. Nothing else." I carried my food back to the couch, set Netflix on, and tried to sink back into my comfort zone, fork halfway to my mouth. Knock. This time it was sharp, clear, deliberate, and it came from the front door. The door was only a few feet away and every muscle in my body went rigid. I stared at the wood like I could will my eyes through it, heart hammering so violently it felt like my ribs might crack. Nobody would be out there. Not in this storm. Not in weather that could kill you just by standing in it. The silence dragged on, stretching seconds into hours. My breath stuttered in and out, shallow and uneven. Finally, forcing myself to move, I slid off the couch and crept to the peephole. Each step seemed to echo in the house loud enough to betray me. I pressed my eye to the glass. The peephole was fogged, wet from condensation, distorting everything into blurred streaks of gray and black. Rain slashed sideways, thick as curtains. No shapes, no figures, no movement. Still, something in me wanted more proof. My fingers trembled as I unlatched the chain and cracked the door open just an inch. Cold wind and rain rushed in. The porch was empty. The yard beyond was an ocean of shadows and swaying trees. For a second, relief hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled, but then my eyes fell downward. Footprints. Dark, heavy impressions stamped in the mud leading straight up to the porch. The storm hadn't washed them away yet, which meant they weren't old. They were fresh. I slammed the door shut with a crack, fumbling with the lock until the deadbolt clicked. My breathing came fast and uneven. My hands shook so badly I checked the lock again and again, making sure it hadn't slipped. "Don't panic, Maya. Don't panic." Maybe someone came for help, then left. Maybe a neighbor, even though the closest house was far enough away that nobody would be walking in this weather. I set my food aside and sank onto the couch, my eyes locked on the door until they burned. The storm wailed, the house creaked, but no more knocks came. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. When I opened my eyes again, the world was black. The TV had timed out, leaving only the sound of the storm clawing at the house. I blinked groggily, reached for my phone on the cushion beside me. 3% battery, 6 missed calls, 4 texts from Mom. "You okay?" "Roads still closed. Staying here tonight. Call us when you can." I rubbed my face, sat up, and froze. A sound drifted through the house, not wind, not wood shifting, a heavy, deliberate thud. A footstep, and it came from upstairs, from my bedroom. The world shrank into a pinpoint. My pulse roared in my ears, every instinct in me screaming one word: run. I slid off the couch, every muscle aching with tension, and padded as quietly as I could down the hall to the downstairs bathroom. My fingers fumbled with the knob, fumbling twice before the lock clicked. I turned my phone brightness all the way down, hands trembling, and dialed 911. When the operator answered, I could barely make my voice work. "My name is Maya Carter. I live at 214 West Hollow Road. Someone's in my house." She started asking questions, calm, professional, but I muted the call just enough to hear her faint voice and the storm outside. My attention locked upward. Footsteps creaked across the ceiling. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Then they paused, and my heart stopped with them. Another creak, another, heading toward the stairs. I bit down hard on my fist to keep any sound from escaping. The steps reached the bottom landing. Silence. I didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't blink. Seconds bled into minutes. The only sound was the storm filling every gap. Then, The front door exploded open with a crash. "Police!" voices shouted over the wind. I bolted from the bathroom, my chest heaving so violently I thought I might collapse. 2 officers stood on the porch, drenched, flashlights cutting through the dark. Behind me, the house sat still, silent. They swept through every room. Their radios crackled softly, boots tracking rainwater on the floor. Upstairs, they found my bedroom door wide open. The window gaped, curtains whipping wildly in the storm. In the kitchen, the sliding glass door had been forced open just enough for rain to pool on the floorboards. Whoever it was, he, she, whoever, they were gone. But not before walking through my room. Not before searching for me. Waiting. Patient. If the storm hadn't drowned the sound of them breaking in, if I'd gone upstairs when the first knocks came, I wouldn't be here to write this. To this day, I don't know who it was. Male, female, old, young, someone random, or someone who already knew me. What I do know is this: they weren't there to steal. They weren't in a hurry. They were there for me.